This is Greg Helbeck here, and thank you for watching or listening to another video breakdown or audio podcast, depending on how you're consuming this. If you're not familiar with me, I have been a full-time entrepreneur for almost 10 years now. The point of this show and channel is to share everything I've learned so far over the last decade with you for free. So if you get value from this episode, do me a favor, subscribe to the channel, like the video, and share the audio feed on social media or with other people. So today I'm going to talk about a real estate weekly lesson, and this one is a very near and dear one to my heart. And it's how do you process a new lead? How do you intake a lead? What are the basics of intaking leads so you can actually have a good conversation with somebody in order to determine if it's a fit for you to buy the house or not? So first things first, just to give you some qualifications here, I've probably spoken to 5,000 leads, probably more at this point. We do a lot of deals, so I got a lot of experience talking to sellers. I don't do it full time anymore because I have people who work with me that do that on my behalf. However, I pretty much heard everything you could hear when it comes to talking with sellers. So I know exactly what I'm talking about when it comes to this stuff. So first thing is first, when you're talking to a lead, you have to be in a situation where you can have a clear, concise conversation with the seller, right? I hear a lot of freaking calls when I used to do a lot of sales training, and they'd be like, running around outside, or they'd be in the bathroom, or they would be at like a fair. And I'm like, you can't have a conversation with somebody to see if they're a fit if you're not in an environment where you can actually have that conversation. So that goes for you and the seller. If the seller is at the grocery store, have them call you when they get back so they can have your undivided attention. And the same thing with you. You got to be in an environment where the seller can hear you clearly and you can hear the seller clearly, and you both have each other's undivided attention. So that's the first lesson, which is like common sense, like no shit. But I'm telling you right now, if you follow that lesson, the other lessons are going to be easier. So lesson number two, when you're talking to a seller, you want to act like you don't really know why they're selling, even if they're super motivated. You always want to be surprised. Like, how come you called me? What's the reason we're on the phone today? You want to act very inquisitive, right? You don't want to act like you're some boiler room salesman person. You want to act curious. You want to ask a lot of questions. You want to almost pretend like you're a detective, like you're investigating a crime scene or something like that. What's going on here? Who did this? How come they showed up at 12 o'clock to rob the bank? Whatever the case is. Why is the vault open? You want to act like you're a detective when you're dealing with these types of sellers, because at the end of the day, you're never going to convince the seller to sell you the house, right? You're just going to have them justify why they might want to do it. That's another lesson here. You cannot convince somebody to sell their house below market value. You can discover that, you can ask questions, but you can't convince somebody, oh, Stacy, your house is worth 400,000. Trust me, sell it to me for 200. It'll be easy. It'll be quick. It'll be clean. You're never going to convince somebody to sell their house at a discount. Ever. Trust me, I've tried over 100 times. It doesn't work. So, third lesson, once you, number one, get into a situation where you can hear the seller and the seller can hear you clearly, and you're acting with this mindset like you're a detective, you're inquisitive, you're curious, and you have that mindset, the actual nuts and bolts of the call should go like this. You should ask the seller first about their situation via open-ended questions. So you should say, Bob, this sounds like a great house. What's the reason you want to consider selling it, right? You want the open-ended questions that start with what or how. Those are called interrogatives. You want those questions to get the seller to actually talk about their situation. Forget about the condition of the property. That's important, but we want to cover that after. We want to figure out their motivation first and then figure out the condition second. Usually, if their motivation is high, the condition is bad as well, hence they're motivated. So you want to start the conversation off by their situation, and you want to ask open-ended questions on why they're interested in selling the house. And you want to do it in like a cool way. Like, instead of being like, why do you want to sell your house? What's the reason you want to consider selling now? And you want to make sure that your tonality is easy for the other person on the other end of the phone to interpret as good, friendly, positive, helpful. And you ask the same question, but your tone of voice gets their perception to be completely different. And they're going to be much more open to answering it in a productive manner. So after you figure out their situation, and by the way, this is just lead intake. This is not negotiating. That could be a separate video. Once you figure out why they're selling the house, if they're even serious about selling, you want to figure out the condition. On a scale from 1 to 10, Bob, where would you say the condition is and why? Oh, I'd say it's probably a 7. Okay. What makes it a 7? Oh, well, it needs some updating. Oh, okay. When you say updating, like what would I have to update if I bought the house? And then boom, you see what I'm doing on this. Every single thing the seller says, I'm basically reversing them and I'm getting them to explain further so I can get more information out of that call and see if I can help that customer. So instead of being like, it's a 7 out of 10. Thanks. Let's go on to the next question. It's like, oh, okay, Bob, 7 out of 10. What makes it a 7? And then you can drill down on things at that point so you're both on the same page. Okay, so it sounds like I have to replace the roof because it's old. Okay, great. How about the boiler? What's the condition of the boiler? Okay, so it sounds like you've had the boiler since 2005 and you've had it serviced. What type of issues have you had with the boiler since the last 2 years? Oh, nothing. So it sounds like the boiler's in good shape as long as I keep maintaining it. And you see what I'm doing here? I'm just getting them to tell me all this information, then I'm summarizing it. And then when you repeat back what they told you, it builds rapport because they actually know that you're listening and understand them. And then step number 4 is you set clear and proper expectations on the next step. And usually the next step is, okay, I'm going to review this information and then we're going to set an appointment. Or it could be, hey, I'd love to go out and see the house. When can we go out and take a look at it? Or, hey, I think I'm ready to make you an offer right now. Can we spend another 45 minutes on the phone so I can discuss an offer for you? So just at the end of the lead intake call, you always want to have a clear expectation of what the next steps are. And I'll tell you what, when you're dealing with unmotivated sellers, the next steps are usually, hey, I don't think I could be a fit to buy this based on what you told me in this discovery call. I just don't think me buying the house for cash would do you any benefit. So just have clear expectations with what the next steps are, if there are any. And that will definitely make you stand out amongst the sea of competition. So hopefully you got value from this. If you got a deal in New York, San Diego, Reno, Delaware, New Jersey, or Seattle, and you want to wholesale it to me or wholesale it with me. And by the way, I'm selling a flip right now that I bought from a wholesaler today. So I need more deals. So if you have a deal, email to me, greg@velocityhousebuyers.com, or you can send me a DM on Instagram at grego37, and I'll see you on the next REI weekly lesson.